Hi, Vincent Hall, and welcome to another episode of Anyone Can Draw, Paint, or Create. Today we're going to do a continuation of last week's drawing where we were doing continuous line. Just to review a little bit, we were talking about not picking up your pen or pencil from the paper, but rather starting at one point and taking that challenge of just keeping on going until you get the entire project on your paper. As you recall, I was working out some geraniums and I did some in pen and some in pencil. What we're going to do today are two things. First, I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to fill in this. Although I think a contour drawing or a line drawing can be beautiful in its own right, we'll add some color on one or two of these in different mediums just to give you some ideas of what can be done. And then I'm going to show you, for those of you especially that are painters, how to do a continuous line painting. You're thinking, that's not possible. I have to pick up my brush. Of course you have to pick up the brush now and then to change colors. I'm talking about a continuous line painting where we're getting the shapes in of the object using just one color. Well, in this case, I'm going to use sepia tone brown and get the basic composition done all in one brush stroke. Hopefully my brush will hold out with some water and we'll see how that turns out. Anyway, let's get started on our geranium. So I have my geranium drawing from last week finished as far as the continuous line. This side was the pencil and this side is the pen and ink. So I'm going to try some wet medium on the pen and ink part and I'll use dry medium on the pencil. So to get started with the pencil, if you recall my geraniums were red, it's really pretty simple. It's just a matter of filling in these areas the way you would like them to be in dry medium. And what I would do, just to make the petals look uniform yet somewhat distinct, is just take the same color and fill it in almost like you're doing a puzzle piece. So I'll do a couple in this darker red. And it's nice to go outside the lines too. So just like coloring books, it's good to go outside the line. Then maybe I'm going to use a pinker color, a more pink color, to just go in and add some definition here in these colors of the red. Maybe make one just that same pink in here and here. And again, this is an intuitive process. If you have several varieties of red pencils, by all means use them. If you just have one, you could consider pressing harder or lighter to give you some different effects, or even mixing some different colors, maybe some reds and some blues together to make more of a dark red or a purpley color, just to give it some different tones. And I'm just gonna kind of fill it in like this, and then I will pick this up here and give you a sense of what we did a little bit closer. So you can see there's some different colors. And I can leave that white paper tone show through, or if you happen to have a white color pencil, they work great as a blender. And if you can see here, we'll zoom in just a little bit closer. I'm just taking the white and going over my colors. And yes, it is lightening that darker red a little bit. I can just kind of go over the whole flower pretty fast. But it's blending it in, which gives it a really nice tone. And again, if you remember our previous lesson of always going in opposite direction, you can do that. What I like to do is to take colors that are similar and mix them into the petals, but then take the opposite color. And this is a dark green. It almost looks black in the camera, but it's a dark green pencil. And just kind of go around some of the lines that I had already created. And just again, being loose with this and create some shadows so that it doesn't look too flat. And then go back over some of that with my reds over the white and everything else. And just give this more of a geranium pop and maybe less of a carnation, which is where these colors were starting to come from here in the beginning. So as you can see, I'm kind of going over everything, but the beauty of colored pencil is everything you do takes on a life of its own, and it always adds on to what you did before. So that's also very nice that you get to see that. I'm going to now take my dark green again and just go in here and define a little bit more of some of these petals that might have been more in the background and give them a shadow. Remember, red and green are complements, so they can create darker tones, and we'll just kind of finish along like that. So that's a sample of how you could color in a contour line drawing or a continuous line modified contour line drawing. That's a lot of words, all by using color pencil. There's an option, and some artists do this, where they color parts of the image and leave the others black and white. And that can be an interesting look for some things. Maybe I'll continue the stem down here a little bit. So some are black and white, some are color. It's up to you, whatever you might want to do with that. You can also use, I'll do this on the leaf here, just use the greens as outlines. So you can see I'm going around my outline, and then I might take a lighter green and add just a little bit of hints of color here and there, but leave most of it still white. So I'm just kind of using this, make a little bit thicker color in here, but really just using the green colors and letting most of this stay white. So you could do it as just outlining and then re-outlining so it looks like a colored contour line drawing. Or if you're so inclined, you could try it again and just use color pencil from the beginning. Now, for my for my pen drawing, sorry about that, I'm going to take some watered down acrylic because it's very close to watercolor, and I happen to have that here. I'm going to mix it up very thin. So this is like watercolor. If you have that leftover food coloring from the lesson 2 weeks ago, go ahead and use that. But you can see what's going to happen here is I can stain this whole flower a color. I think these were those little buds that were down here, but they were also in a pinkish tone. Maybe they had a little green too. I can stain everything one color of paint in my watercolor or food coloring or watered down acrylic, whatever you're using. And because the pen, a ballpoint pen, is not going to run in water. That's why they're always good to use for when you're mailing something, because hopefully nothing is going to get diluted to the point that the postman can't read it. So same thing with this. If I want to go a little darker in some areas, I can. I need to add a little water there, and I'll show you how dark we can go here as I build up a second layer. And yes, the paper's going to buckle a little bit, as we know it will. I'll just do a few of these dots, maybe not all of them. I'll leave some of the pinker color. But you can see the beauty of this is no matter how dark we go, with it being a watercolor diluted pigment, those beautiful lines that you did are going to show through. And that's what's going to make this a really interesting image and create something that is unique and aesthetically pleasing as well. So you can take your pick. You can do wet medium, you can do dry medium. Now, you might be wondering what happens if I use wet medium over pencil. So I'll show you. Not too much, except, and maybe you'll see a little bit of it here. The pencil is going to dissolve, and you can see it's just getting a little bit of a gray haze, and you might like that. So again, the beauty of this is it's up to you, whatever you might like to do, but I would try doing a contour line, modified contour, or continuous line drawing, and then color it in and see what you get. Actually, before I let this go, I filled in some more of this with the watercolor / watered down acrylic paint, and I wanted to give you one more idea. By taking a watercolor or acrylic watered down paint and filling in just this whole area, it becomes a blob of red. But then taking colored pencil back over it, almost like drawing on colored paper, I'm able to get some beautiful tones and show some different textures on these geranium petals so that it looks more finished and it doesn't have that chalky kind of textured look, which some people do like, and that's certainly fine if you do. of the regular pencil without having any background tones in it. And just like using regular colored pencil, I can go back in over all of these petals and start to define shapes and colors, and even go back in with some greens to bring in some different tones. Maybe kind of keep it loose, because that's the whole idea of this project here. And if you can see here, I did the same thing with the leaves. What I did was add in a bunch of paint tones with one color of green paint, and then I can take my different green leaf colors here and add in where all those folds were that I drew in when I did my continuous line drawing. This will allow us to show depth and detail in our picture, and it's a nice way to introduce yourself to mixed media, which is where you're taking several different media to create one image. And I'm just following along some of these areas. And again here, just like in this leaf, I can add some depth to my picture by including this colored pencil over the watercolor or the mix. So I'm just showing you this. Again, I'm not 100% finished with this, but you can see if you get closer how you can start to show some really nice contrast by taking one color overall and then going back into it. I mean, I could sit here and play with this probably all day, and that's what a lot of artists do. But that's the basic idea. I wanted to just give you this as one last example of what you could do using your continuous line drawing, and then also just mixing the media. So I mixed some paint and some colored pencils together. For my continuous line painting, I selected an image that I photographed in Ireland a few years back. So I have it pulled up on my laptop, which is why you're seeing my keyboard, but I wanted you to see what I'm going to be looking at. And what I'm going to be doing is blocking in some of these areas here. So I'm going to be quickly blocking in the shadows and where the river comes up under the bridge, and just try to get a base of that shoreline. The idea of a continuous line painting is I am simply blocking in my tones, and I'm blocking in my highlight areas, and then I'm going to go back to the normal traditional painting style, but this will give me a quicker way to get that image laid down on my white canvas. What I've done is I've mixed half water and half pigment, so I have a diluted amount of the sepia brown. The old masters used this style to lay in a painting or an underpainting, doing all sepia tones to try to get the sense of where shapes and proportion are. This usually holds out just about as long as your brush does, and this is a very small brush. A larger brush would probably give me more time with the brush and its surface area, but we'll see how this goes. So I am just going to lightly follow along the shapes, and again, I'm doing just my contour outline drawing, and I'm not picking up my brush. And I'm going to come all the way down here, come all the way back. I'm getting the loop of that little bridge that's in there, and I'm coming down along the shoreline, all the way back up into here, picking up more of that pigment again, thank goodness, because I'm running out a little bit, and getting this area in. So this doesn't look like much, but you can see I didn't pick my brush up one time. I went back in and I did a continuous line drawing that gave me just the outline. The idea is this now will tell me where to go next. So modified continuous line drawing, since I did pick up my brush, and now I'm going to go back in and just draw in where I see my shadows, and using the brush, push that in. If you were doing this in pencil, you can now lift up your brush a little bit, but I'm just pushing this back in. I'm coming around here where I see things, scrubbing it in, and going back where I have some more pigment, and just kind of pushing the paint around a little bit. But a fat stroke is still a stroke, and a stroke is still a line. So we're still doing continuous line, we're just pressing it in. So you can see now we're starting to get a little more shadow and a little more information. The last thing I'm going to do, because I haven't changed brushes, I'm trying to keep this simple, so if you only have one little paintbrush at home, you can do this, is go back in and finish the darkest areas in a continuous stroke. So in painting, we can just go up and down and up and down, and this is giving me a continuous stroke and going around and getting all of this in, getting a little area here, and we'll go back in over here. And again, this whole side we'll do as a continuous stroke on the shadow as well. A little bit of tone and rough up this line a little bit because it's supposed to be trees. And that's it. That is not a finished painting, but that is how you get started as a painter if you're trying to do a continuous line outline, but using your brush. There's an adage among artists that you should paint a painting and draw a drawing and don't mix the two of them up. And there's always room for that idea, but I think rules are always meant to be broken, at least in the art world. So it's okay to draw a painting first if you feel more comfortable that way. Because I think it's all about the creative journey that you happen to be on. And if you like the control and you like to draw it out first, that's fine. Here's an example of that same thing. I'll move it back a little bit. This is a continuous line drawing of that same river in Ireland. You can see here's the bridge and the trees and all these lines overlap. And this could almost look a little busy as a drawing, but it's a map of how to get where you want to go with the image you're looking at. So if you like to draw it out first and then paint it, filling it in, much like we did with the geraniums, that's fine. You can always leave it a drawing too. Or if you are a painter and you want to go back in and finish this as a painting, which I will do for next week's class, this is a good way to get started. I know it doesn't look like much now, and don't worry about it. There's a rule I have down in the art studio, and if Barry's watching this, Mr. Lowenkron, I know you know that 50% rule where everybody feels terrified at what their painting looks like. Heck, I'm not even at 50% and I would not frame this. But the idea is using the brush to start your painting rather than the pencil gives you a little more confidence once you get going, because you know you can just do the line, but use a brush instead. The choice is yours. I hope you've enjoyed this segment, Vincent Hall. What I'm going to be showing you next on some samples are some of my continuous line drawings that I had done of a figure, just to keep reminding you of what this continuous line is all about. You can go across the image, you can just do the outline, it's just not picking up the pencil. And then looking at some underpaintings that are done using the sepia tone that I just showed you here. It always helps to hold it the right way, and giving you a sense of what you can do to get started using just one color, brown, on white canvas or paper, and see what you come up with that way. Until next week, Vincent Hall, I hope you have a nice rest of your week. I hope you enjoy this segment. Maybe it will give you a chance to think about some things you might want to try. Again, the idea is to make the art your own. I will see you next week. And until then, be creative, stay well, and have a wonderful rest of your week, Vincent Hall.